Welcome, dear friends, to Family Shadows. If you find meaning in stories about fathers, families, and the fragile strings that hold us together, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, every week, we walk through tales of love, regret, and redemption, stories that may feel uncomfortably close to home, and yet remind us why home matters. Tonight's story is titled, I stepped into my son's kitchen and found a bag that made me call 911. Now, let us begin Chapter 1. The December wind rattled the shutters of Brian's suburban house as I sat at the table, trying to smile while my grandchildren colored at the far end. Emma was bent over her paper, her tongue pressed against her lip in concentration. Jack, younger and more restless, kept switching crayons, filling his snowman with stripes of blue and green. Their laughter filled the dining room, a bright counterpoint to the silence between Brian and his wife, Monica. She picked at her food, he kept checking the clock. I sat across from them both, a widower in his 60s, feeling the absence of my late wife like an uninvited guest at the table. It was supposed to be a family dinner, a warm one, but the warmth seemed to come only from the children. "Grandpa, pass me the red crayon," Emma called. I handed it over, grateful for the distraction. And then, like an old man's body always does, mine reminded me of its limits. My throat felt dry. I excused myself softly, just a glass of water, and rose from my chair. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the glow under the stove hood. I liked the quiet there. The clatter of forks faded behind me. I walked to the sink, reached for a glass from the cabinet. That's when I noticed it, a black backpack shoved halfway under the kitchen counter. It wasn't placed neatly. It looked hurried, careless, as if hidden. I bent slowly, my knees complaining as they always did, and tugged the bag closer. The zipper was open just an inch, enough for the contents to peek out, and what I saw froze me. A stack of bills, money spilled just enough to reveal itself. But these bills weren't clean. They were streaked with red, the unmistakable stain of dye packs, the kind banks use when cash is stolen. For a moment, the world tilted. The kitchen tiles seemed to shift under my feet. My breath came short. No, it can't be. I touched the edge of the zipper with trembling fingers, pulled it back slightly farther. Inside, I caught sight of something worse, a black ski mask folded on top, and next to it the dull metal edge of a handgun. The glass in my hand slipped and shattered in the sink. From the dining room, Emma's voice floated in, innocent and clear. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just clumsy old hands." But I was not fine, not even close. I stood there in that kitchen, the refrigerator humming behind me, my heart pounding against my ribs like a man half my age running for his life. I stared at the bag, at the damning evidence of what my son, my only son, had done. The room felt colder, though I knew it was just me. The walls seemed to close in, memories pressing down. Brian at 10 years old bringing me wrenches in the garage, laughing when I smeared grease on his nose. Brian at 18, shaking my hand the day he left for college. Brian at 38, sitting across from me now, older but not wiser. And in that moment, I heard his words from a late-night call just days earlier echo back to me. "Dad, I've got something big coming. Just trust me. This is the break we need." A break into what? A bank. The weight of it pressed down on me. My legs felt weak. My stomach churned. I reached out to steady myself on the counter, my palms sliding against the cool granite. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself it was a misunderstanding, that maybe this was some sort of prank or costume, that the red on the bills was paint from Emma's crayons. Anything but the truth. But the truth was staring at me, zipped halfway open in a kitchen that smelled faintly of roast chicken and fear. I closed the bag quickly, shoving it back under the counter as footsteps approached. "Dad," Brian's voice, close, too close. I turned, forcing calm into my face. He stood in the doorway, his eyes scanning me with that wary look I hadn't seen since he was a teenager sneaking in past curfew. "You need something?" he asked. His tone was light, but the muscles in his jaw were tight. I held up the empty glass, "Just water." He nodded once too quickly and walked back to the dining room. I stayed there, clutching the counter, my pulse refusing to slow. I could hear the children laughing again, Monica's soft voice urging them to finish their food. And me, an old man in a kitchen, staring at a secret too big for my chest to carry. I pressed a hand against my heart. It thudded unevenly. The weight of a choice pressed on me. Say nothing, protect my son, keep the illusion of family intact, or act and risk tearing it all apart. My eyes fell to the phone on the wall. The numbers blurred for a moment, then cleared. 3 digits, so simple, 911. I whispered it aloud, testing the sound of betrayal, or was it salvation? 911. The refrigerator hummed on. The faucet dripped once. The bag sat hidden again in the shadows of the counter, but its presence filled the room. I looked back toward the dining room, toward the 2 children coloring, their crayons scratching across the paper, their laughter unknowing. And I knew deep inside that whatever I decided tonight would change all of our lives forever. I couldn't sleep that night. Back in my own house, I sat in my recliner long past midnight, the television flickering aimlessly, the sound turned down to a whisper. I kept replaying the moment in Brian's kitchen, my hand on that backpack, the sight of red-stained bills, the metallic edge of a gun. Every detail returned with merciless clarity. The feel of the zipper between my fingers, the sound of the glass slipping from my hand, the way Brian's shadow filled the doorway. I pressed my palms together as if in prayer. "Lord," I whispered, "tell me what to do." The clock on the mantel ticked loud in the silence. I thought of Margaret, my wife, gone now 7 years. She would have known what to say. She had always been steadier than me. Her voice still echoed in my head. "Don't look away from the truth, Edward, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." But truth had never felt so heavy. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and then, like a cruel reminder, my memory pulled me back to the phone call a few nights earlier, the one that had sounded desperate even through the static. It had been nearly 11:30 when the ring cut through my quiet house. I almost didn't answer. At my age, phone calls that late are rarely good news. "Dad," Brian's voice had cracked, thinner than I remembered. "Brian, what's wrong? I need your help, urgently." I'd sat upright at once, fumbling for my glasses. "Are the kids okay?" "They are fine, it's me." He paused then, and I could hear the sound of his footsteps pacing, the echo of his kitchen tiles. "I lost money. Dad, a lot of money." I frowned. "How much?" 50,000. My heart sank. How in the world? Crypto, investments. I thought I was being smart, diversifying. But the market tanked and I borrowed against the house. I pulled from the kids' college fund. I had gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "Brian." I didn't tell Monica yet, I don't know how. She thinks everything is fine, but it's not. I'm drowning here. They're demanding payment by January. If I don't come up with the money, they'll come after the house. Silence had filled the line. Only his breathing, uneven and ragged, and my own pulse pounding in my ears. "There has to be something we can do," I had said at last. "A lawyer maybe, payment plans." "I can't afford a lawyer," he snapped. "I can't afford groceries." I remember staring across my living room, the shadows stretching long. The Christmas tree Margaret used to decorate still stood in the corner, though these days it held fewer ornaments. I kept it lit anyway for the grandchildren when they visited. "I have some savings," I offered softly. "Not much, but—" "Dad." His voice had turned sharp, almost cutting. "This isn't a few $100s. This is real money, life-changing money. I need something substantial." The way he said real money had stung, as though the life I had built, the pension checks, the careful saving, the modest retirement account, meant nothing. I had sat there, feeling suddenly small, like I had failed him. And then his tone softened again, almost coaxing. "You've always said that house is too much for you alone. Too many repairs, too many bills. If you sold it, Dad, you could downsize, live easier, and you'd be helping your grandchildren at the same time." That had been the moment, the first glimpse of the path he was pushing me toward. "Brian," my voice had faltered, "that house is your mother's memory, 37 years of our life." "Mom's gone," he had replied coldly. "She's not coming back because you keep her bedroom the same." The cruelty of that sentence had left me speechless. I had hung up later that night feeling sick, telling myself he was just stressed, just desperate. But now, after the kitchen, after the bag, maybe it hadn't just been desperation, maybe it had been planning. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the curtains. My coffee tasted bitter. I looked out across the frost-tipped lawn, remembering Brian at 10 years old, shoveling snow beside me, his cheeks red with cold. He had complained, but then he'd smiled when I bought him hot chocolate afterward. How does a boy with hot chocolate on his upper lip turn into a man hiding guns in a kitchen bag? The phone rang, startling me. My heart jumped. It was Pastor Samuel, my old friend. "You sound worn, Edward," he said gently after I answered. "Did you sleep?" "Not much." We spoke for a while, mostly about the upcoming church service, the Christmas pageant, the children rehearsing their lines. But my mind kept drifting. Finally, Samuel paused. "What's on your mind, old friend?" I hesitated. "Brian." Samuel sighed softly. "That boy, he's lost right now, but lost doesn't have to mean gone forever." His words gave me little comfort, because the image of that bag wouldn't leave me. That night I returned to Brian's house for another dinner. I told myself I needed to see his eyes, to study him, to decide if there was still a way back for him. Emma ran to greet me, wrapping her small arms around my waist. Jack followed, bouncing on his toes. "Grandpa, Grandpa, I made you something." Emma thrust a drawing into my hands. It was a picture of a house with smoke curling from the chimney, stick figures smiling in front, me, her, Jack. I nearly broke down then, the innocence of it cutting deeper than any evidence could. At the table, Brian was quieter than usual. He avoided my gaze. Monica's hands shook as she poured water. I chewed slowly, barely tasting the food. I glanced toward the kitchen. The bag was gone, but the absence of it was not relief, it was proof. He had moved it, hidden it better. As I watched him sip from his glass, my memory dragged me back again to that midnight call, to the way his voice had shifted from desperation to calculation. I knew in my gut that the bag was real, the crime was real, and the danger was real. And yet he was still my son. I looked at him, and I saw not the man with debts and secrets, but the boy who used to curl up on the couch beside Margaret and me during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't let go, Dad." My fork trembled. What does a father do when holding on feels like losing everything else? I reached for my napkin, dabbing at my mouth, and steadied my voice. "Brian," I said softly, "can we talk after dinner?" His fork paused midair. He met my eyes, and for just a moment, I saw fear flicker there. "Sure, Dad," he said. And the way he said it told me everything. He already knew what I had found. The house grew quieter once the children finished their dessert and bounded upstairs, their footsteps echoing down the hallway like distant drums. I stayed at the table, my coffee cooling in my hand, while Brian stacked the plates with a distracted rhythm. Monica moved around him like a ghost, collecting utensils, her eyes fixed anywhere but on me. There's a silence in families that isn't really silence at all. It hums with the words no one dares to say. Tonight, that silence wrapped itself around the dining room like another presence. "Emma drew you that picture at school today," Monica said at last, her voice thin as if the air had been pressed from her lungs. I nodded, my throat too tight to answer. Brian set the plates in the sink, water splashing too loudly. His shoulders were hunched, stiff with unspoken weight. I thought of the backpack, the gun, the red-stained money. I thought of the way his eyes had darted at me when I asked to talk after dinner. When he left the room, Monica sank into the chair beside me. Her hands trembled as she smoothed her apron. She didn't look at me at first, just stared at her lap. Finally, she whispered, "Something's wrong with him, Edward." I turned to her slowly. Her voice cracked on the edges like glass about to splinter. "He doesn't sleep. He's gone for hours at night. The bills are piling up and he won't let me see them. Every time I ask, he snaps at me. And the children, they ask why Daddy's angry all the time." Her eyes lifted then, wet and shining. "I don't know who I married anymore." Her words felt like a confession, one she had held back for too long. My chest tightened. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be fine, but the truth was clawing at my throat. "Monica," I began carefully, has he told you anything about money?" She shook her head. "Only that it's tight, but I see the credit card statements. We're not just tight, we're sinking." She swallowed hard. "Sometimes he comes home with bruises on his arms. He says it's nothing. But I see things, Edward, I'm not blind." The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. Upstairs, Emma's laugh floated down, followed by Jack's excited voice. Childhood, still untouched, still believing the world was safe. I placed my hand gently over Monica's. "You're not blind," I said softly. "You're just afraid to name what you already know." Her lip trembled. "And what do you know?" Before I could answer, Brian re-entered the room. He froze when he saw our hands. His eyes darted between us, suspicion flaring. "What are you two whispering about?" His tone was sharp, defensive. Monica snatched her hand back as if burned. "Nothing, just talking about the kids' homework." Brian narrowed his eyes, then forced a laugh too loud for the quiet room. "Homework," he muttered. He grabbed a towel and began drying the dishes with jerky motions, his back to us. I watched his shoulders, the tension in them, the way his movements betrayed the storm inside. The truth is, families don't need words to reveal themselves. They unravel in whispers, in half-finished sentences, in the fear in a wife's eyes, in the silence of a father who no longer knows his son. I sat there, listening to the faucet drip, the towel rub across porcelain, the weight of everything unspoken pressing heavier with each second. When I finally rose to leave, Emma and Jack raced downstairs in their pajamas. "Grandpa's story," Jack pleaded, clutching a book with worn corners. I hesitated, glancing at Brian. He gave a curt nod. So I sat on the couch with both children leaning against me, their small heads warm on my arms. I read about a bear and a winter cave, about safety and warmth, about finding home when the snow is deep. Halfway through, Emma whispered, "Grandpa, why is Daddy sad all the time?" The words pierced me. I swallowed hard, the letters on the page blurring. "Sometimes grown-ups forget how to be happy," I told her gently, "but it doesn't mean they don't love you." She looked up at me with wide eyes, her innocence both beautiful and unbearable. "Do you think Daddy will remember?" I kissed the top of her head. "I pray he does." Later, when they were tucked into bed and the house quiet again, I stood at the doorway ready to leave. Brian followed me out, his face unreadable in the porch light. "You've been asking questions," he said. "It wasn't accusation, it was fact." I met his gaze. "You've been hiding answers." His jaw tightened. For a long moment we just stood there, the December wind swirling between us. Finally he stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "Don't go digging where you don't belong, Dad." He turned and walked back into the house, the door closing with a soft, final click. I stood alone on the porch, the cold biting at my face, the words echoing in my chest. Don't go digging where you don't belong. But it was my family, my blood, my grandchildren asleep upstairs, and I knew, as sure as I knew my own name, that I would keep digging, no matter what it cost. The next Sunday, Monica called and invited me for dinner again. Her voice was polite, careful, as though she were reading from a script someone had placed in her hands. I could hear the hesitation underneath, the kind that lives between a wife's loyalty and her quiet terror. "Edward," she said, "the kids would love to see you, and it might do Brian some good too." I agreed, though every part of me wanted to stay home. But when grandchildren tug on your heart, you go, even if it means walking into a storm. The house looked festive from the outside, Christmas lights strung along the porch railing, a plastic snowman smiling by the steps. Inside, though, the air was thick. Emma ran to me the moment I stepped in, her arms wrapping around my waist. Jack followed, bouncing on his toes. "Grandpa, come see the train set Daddy set up," he cried, tugging at my sleeve. I let him lead me into the living room where a miniature village sprawled across the floor, tracks winding around toy houses, little trees dusted with fake snow. It was beautiful, and for a moment I saw the Brian I used to know, the boy who spent hours in our garage building race cars out of scraps. But when I looked up, Brian was standing in the doorway, watching. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Dad," he said, his voice flat, "glad you made it." We gathered at the table soon after. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans steamed just right. Monica had worked hard, I could tell, but she moved nervously, her hands fluttering too quickly from one dish to another. The children chattered happily, filling the room with their innocence. Emma described her art project at school. Jack recited lines from his Christmas play, stumbling over the words but grinning with pride. Brian cut his meat in silence. His fork scraped against the plate, the sound sharp as a blade. I watched him from across the table. His eyes flicked to me once, then away like a man guarding secrets. I forced conversation, asking about work, about the children's grades, about anything that might thaw the ice. Each time his answers were short, clipped, designed to end the topic rather than open it. At one point, Emma leaned over to whisper, "Grandpa, Daddy doesn't laugh anymore." Her little voice carried more weight than any accusation could. I reached out and squeezed her hand under the table. "Then we'll laugh for him, sweetheart," I whispered back. The silence grew heavier as the meal went on. It wasn't the comfortable silence of family who need no words. It was the silence of words buried alive, straining against their graves. I glanced toward the kitchen. The backpack wasn't visible anymore, but I felt its shadow even here at the table. Monica dropped her fork, the clatter startling everyone. She bent quickly to pick it up, her face flushed. "Sorry," she murmured, but I caught the tremor in her hands, the way her eyes darted toward Brian as though seeking permission to breathe. Brian set down his knife slowly. "Is everything okay?" His voice was calm, but his gaze was sharp. "Fine," Monica said quickly, too quickly. The children looked between them, confused. Jack poked at his potatoes, his small brow furrowed. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to slam my fists on the table to demand answers right there. But the children were watching, and some truths cannot be unleashed in front of innocent eyes. So I forced a smile, lifted my glass. "To family," I said softly. Emma and Jack eagerly raised their cups of juice. "To family," they echoed. Brian's eyes locked with mine across the table. He raised his glass too, but the way he drank was more a challenge than a toast. The clink of crystal echoed too loudly in the quiet room. Dinner ended with the children running back to their train set, their laughter a fragile shield against the storm brewing above them. I stayed seated, my hands folded tightly on the table. Monica cleared dishes in silence. Brian leaned back in his chair, staring at me, air between us electric with unspoken war. Finally, he leaned forward, his elbows on the table. His voice was low, steady. "Dad, I need you to stop looking at me like that." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Like what?" "Like you know something." The words hung in the air like smoke. I said nothing, because sometimes silence speaks louder than any confession. He pushed back his chair, the legs scraping against the floor, and walked toward the kitchen. The light flicked on. I heard the cupboard door slam, then the fridge. Movements sharp, restless, like a man pacing inside his own cage. Monica returned, her face pale. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Instead, she placed her trembling hand over mine. Her eyes told me everything her lips could not. "Save us." And in that moment, I knew this was no longer about money. This was about survival. The house was still when I returned that night. My old clock ticked in the hallway like a reminder. That time doesn't wait for fathers to figure out their sons. I sat in my armchair staring at the silent phone, wondering how long a man can carry suspicion before it breaks him. I lasted 2 days. 2 days of pacing my own living room, of hearing Emma's voice in my memory. "Grandpa, why is Daddy sad all the time?" 2 days of seeing Monica's pleading eyes across the dinner table, her fingers tightening over mine without a word. By the 3rd evening, I couldn't bear it anymore. I told myself I only needed to see it once more to know beyond doubt. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe my eyes had deceived me. Maybe the bag was nothing more than some forgotten tool kit. But deep down, I already knew. When Monica invited me again for dinner, "The kids would love to show you their train set." I agreed. My heart hammered the whole drive over, the headlights cutting through the December dark. Inside, everything looked perfectly normal. Roast chicken again, children laughing. A board game spread on the coffee table. But beneath it all, the tension coiled like a rattlesnake waiting to strike. After dinner, Brian excused himself to take a call outside. His voice carried through the window, low and hurried, words I couldn't quite catch. Monica busied herself with the children. My chance had come. I walked softly into the kitchen. My hands shook as I opened the lower cabinet near the fridge. And there it was, shoved behind cleaning supplies, its zipper straining, the black backpack. I pulled it out slowly, setting it on the counter. My breath came in shallow gasps. For a long moment, I only stared. My hand hovered above the zipper like a man about to lift the lid of his own coffin. Finally, I pulled it open. The smell hit me first, metallic, acrid, like gun oil mixed with sweat. Inside, everything I feared waited patiently. A handgun, matte black, heavy in its ugliness. Beside it, a ski mask folded tight. and beneath them stacks of bills wrapped with rubber bands, the edges stained with the bright crimson of die packs, the kind banks used to mark stolen money. My knees buckled. I gripped the counter to steady myself. It was no mistake, no illusion. My son was a criminal. The gun caught the light from the overhead bulb, and suddenly I remembered the years in the garage teaching Brian how to hold a wrench, how to fit a bolt. I had placed tools in those hands. Now he placed a weapon in them himself. A low sound escaped me, half groan, half prayer. "God help me," I whispered. I reached deeper into the bag and my fingers brushed a folded piece of paper. I pulled it out. It was a map, hand-drawn, sloppy but clear. An intersection downtown. An arrow pointing to a small building I recognized from the news, First State Bank. Headlines flashed in my memory: armed robbery. Suspects flee with cash. Police investigating. And here it was. The evidence lying on my son's kitchen counter. I staggered back, my heart pounding so loudly I feared it would bring the whole house running. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I spun, stuffing the map back into the bag, trying to zip it closed with trembling hands. Brian stood in the doorway. His face was half shadow, but I saw enough. His eyes dropped to the bag, then back to me. "What are you doing, Dad?" His voice was calm, but too calm, like the surface of a lake hiding deep water. My throat went dry, looking for a dish towel. Monica asked me to help. He stepped closer. "Dish towels are in the drawer, not in my bag." My mouth opened, but no words came. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The kitchen hummed with the refrigerator, the faint sound of the children's laughter drifting in from the living room. But here, between us, everything was silent. Then Brian's hand shot out. He grabbed the bag, yanking it from the counter. He slung it over his shoulder. His jaw clenched. "You should have stayed out of it," he said, his voice low, dangerous. He brushed past me, his shoulder bumping mine harder than necessary. The smell of cold air and sweat trailed him. I stood there frozen, my hand still on the counter, my breath ragged. In that moment, I felt more alone than I had since the day Margaret died. My son was gone, or if not gone, buried under something I couldn't reach. And I knew, just as surely as I knew my own name, that the next decision I made would determine whether my grandchildren grew up safe or grew up in the shadow of their father's sins. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of the gun, the ski mask, and those crimson-stained bills lay across my mind like broken glass. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brian's face in the kitchen doorway, calm, guarded, as though he had rehearsed for this moment all his life. I told myself I'd confront him tomorrow, that a night's rest might clear my thoughts, but fathers know better. Some truths fester if left too long. And this one was already poisoning the air we breathed. So the next evening, after workmen's shadows had stretched long across the frozen streets, I drove back to his house. I didn't call ahead. Some conversations can't be scheduled. Brian was sitting at the table, sleeves rolled, nursing a glass of something dark. Monica was upstairs, coaxing the children into bed. The house was quiet, too quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. He looked up as I entered, his eyes narrowing. "Back again so soon?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady though my heart rattled in my chest. "We need to talk." He leaned back, smirking, as if amused by my sudden boldness. "Talk, Dad, or accuse?" I sat down across from him, folding my hands. I saw what's in the bag. His smirk faltered just a flicker, then returned. And you're in trouble deeper than you understand." He chuckled low. "Don't preach to me. You think you're the first to figure out life isn't cheap, that sometimes you've gotta bend the rules to provide. Provide. My voice rose. You call a gun and stolen money providing. You call risking your wife's peace and your children's safety providing. His jaw tightened. He swirled the glass, watching the liquid rise and fall. You wouldn't understand. Then make me, I said. Help me understand why the boy I raised, the boy who once cried when his hamster died, now hides weapons in his kitchen. The words landed heavy. His eyes darted to the side as though the floorboards might whisper an answer. Finally, he spoke, low and fierce. I owe money, a lot of it. You think jobs fall into my lap like they did in your day. You think the world cares about another middle-aged man with bills. I tried, Dad. I tried everything. Then someone offered me a way out. Easy money, quick, clean, clean. I slammed my palm on the table. That money is stained red. Do you even see it? Red Brian. From the banks you've terrorized, from the fear you've left in strangers' eyes. His glass hit the table hard. It was supposed to be for my family, for Monica, for the kids, to give them what I never had. I stood trembling with rage. You had more than you ever realized, a home, a mother who adored you, a father who worked himself raw to pay for your future. You had love, and now you risk it all for what? For stacks of poisoned bills. He stood 2 inches from me now, his breath hot, his eyes blazing. Don't act like you're some saint. You saved every penny but never had enough to make us comfortable. Mom patched clothes till they fell apart. We never took vacations. You call that a life? The words cut deep, sharper than the cold outside. Memories of Margaret at the sewing machine, her fingers worn but smiling, flashed in my mind. She had called it love. He called it deprivation. You ungrateful boy, I whispered. Your mother gave you everything she had. We both did. And still it wasn't enough. His voice cracked then, not with regret but with desperation. It has to be enough now, because if I don't pay them back, they'll come for me, for Monica, for the kids. You think I want this. You think I don't hate myself every night. Silence fell between us, heavier than any words. I saw the sweat on his brow, the twitch in his hands, the way his bravado crumbled into something rower, something pitiful. At last, I said the only thing that mattered. You need to stop, tonight, before it takes everything from you. He shook his head, almost laughing. Stop. It's not that simple. You don't just walk away from men like this. You pay or you bleed. My throat closed. For a moment I saw him not as the man before me, but as the boy who once reached for my hand crossing the street. Then let me help, I said quietly. He stared, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Help. I can't give you money. I won't. But I can stand with you. Go to the police. Face it head on. It's the only way to save what's left. His face hardened, the mask snapping back into place. Police. He spat the word. You'd sell your own son to strangers with badges. I met his gaze, my voice steady though my soul trembled. Better strangers with badges than men with guns. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he leaned close, his voice low, venomous. You're either with me, Dad, or against me. He turned and stormed from the room, the floor shaking under his steps. I stood alone at the table, my hand pressed against the wood as though it might keep me steady. My chest ached, not from age but from the unbearable truth. My son had drawn a line, and I knew sooner or later I would have to choose which side of it I stood on. I didn't sleep that night. The words, you're either with me, Dad, or against me, echoed through my head until they carved into my bones. A father's worst nightmare isn't death. It's watching the child he raised turn into someone he can't recognize. By morning, my hands trembled so badly I spilled half my coffee before even lifting it to my lips. The house felt hollow, Margaret's absence screaming louder than usual. Her photo sat on the mantel, her smile frozen in time, eyes that had once steadied me through every storm. What would you tell me now? I whispered to her frame. Would you tell me to protect him or to protect them from him? Her silence was the answer I feared most. That evening, Monica called. Edward, she said softly, can you come for dinner again? The kids won't stop asking. I hesitated, my heart twisting. Monica, is it safe? A pause, then a whisper barely audible, no, but I don't know how to keep them safe without you, so I went. The table was set like nothing was wrong. Roast pork, rolls warm from the oven, candles flickering. Emma and Jack laughed as they showed me their drawings, Emma's careful shapes, Jack's wild colors. For a moment, I let myself believe in normal, but across the table Brian watched me like a wolf guarding its kill. His fork moved, his lips chewed, but his eyes never softened. When the children finally scattered to play, silence filled the room. Monica cleared plates, her back to us. Brian leaned closer, his voice low, hard. Have you thought about what I said? Yes, I answered. My voice was quiet but steady. I've thought about nothing else. And I looked him straight in the eye. I can't be with you in this, Brian. His jaw clenched. So you're against me. I'm against what you've become, I said, my throat tight. Not who you are. Who you are is still my son, but this isn't you. This is a sickness, and if I don't act now, it will swallow everything you love. His fist hit the table so hard the silverware rattled. You think you can stop me. You think you can save them without me. My heart raced. The room seemed smaller, the walls pressing in. Monica froze at the sink, her hands gripping the counter. The words tore from me before I even realized I was saying them. I'm calling the police, Brian. The silence that followed was absolute. No clock tick, no child's laughter, just the sound of his breath, sharp and ragged. You'd call 911 on your own son. His voice cracked, a strange mix of fury and disbelief. I rose from my chair. I'd call 911 to save my grandchildren from losing both their father and their innocence. I'd call to protect Monica from living with the shadow of your choices. And I'd call because your mother raised me to believe justice matters more than comfort. My fingers found the phone in my pocket. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, but now that it was real, my hands shook so violently I nearly dropped it. Brian lunged across the table, but Monica stepped between us, her arms outstretched. Brian, stop, she cried. Think of the children. For a flicker, I saw conflict in his eyes, love battling desperation. But then it vanished, swallowed by the same darkness I had glimpsed before. I dialed 3 numbers. 911. The line clicked. A calm voice answered, 911, what's your emergency? I swallowed hard, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. This is Edward Collins. I need help. My son, he's armed and he's been involved in a robbery. Please send someone quickly. The dispatcher's voice was professional, but I barely heard it over the sound of Brian's roar. He slammed his fist against the wall, his face twisted with betrayal. You've destroyed me, Dad, he spat. You've destroyed this family. No, I whispered, the phone still pressed to my ear. I'm trying to save what's left. In the distance, faint but growing, I heard sirens. The sound sliced through the winter night like judgment itself. Emma and Jack appeared at the top of the stairs, their eyes wide, clutching the banister. Grandpa, Emma's voice quivered. What's happening? My heart shattered. I opened my arms. It's okay, sweetheart, Grandpa's here. Everything's going to be okay. But even as I said it, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The sirens grew louder. The lights of justice were coming, and my hand tightened around the phone, my soul braced for the cost of choosing truth over blood. Red and blue lights flashed across the windows, painting the walls of Brian's dining room with colors no family should ever have to see. The sirens wailed, then cut suddenly, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. The knock on the door rattled the whole house. "Police, open up!" Brian froze in the hallway, his fists clenched at his sides. Monica stood trembling, shielding the children behind her. Emma and Jack clung to her skirt, their eyes wide with terror. I stepped forward, my voice breaking but firm. "Brian, please, don't make this worse." For a heartbeat, his chest rose and fell like a man about to run. Then the weight of reality seemed to crash on his shoulders. His face collapsed, not into regret but into something darker, defeat. When the officers entered, guns drawn, Brian raised his hand slowly. His eyes found mine, burning with betrayal, hollow with anger. "You've ruined me, Dad," he hissed as they cuffed his wrists. Tears blurred my vision. "No, son," I whispered. "You ruined yourself. I only refuse to help you burn the rest of us with you." Emma cried out, "Daddy!" Jack clutched her arm. The sight of their father being led away would scar them, I knew. But sometimes scars were safer than lies. Detective Harris met my gaze as he collected the black backpack from the kitchen. His expression was steady, professional, but I caught the flicker of something human in his eyes, understanding, perhaps, of the cost carved into a father's heart. When the door shut behind them, silence fell again, heavier than ever. Monica sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. The children pressed against me, their small bodies shaking. I wrapped my arms around them, whispering promises I prayed I could keep. "It's over," I told them. "You're safe now. Grandpa's here. Grandpa won't let anything happen to you." They buried their faces against my chest, and for the first time in weeks I felt the faint stirrings of hope. The weeks that followed were long, filled with hearings, statements, and questions from strangers in suits. Brian was sentenced swiftly. The evidence was too clear. Monica filed for divorce, and the children came to stay with me often. My old house, once too quiet, now rang with laughter again. Emma's crayons colored the coffee table. Jack's toy trains circled the living room rug. In the garden Margaret had loved, I found myself teaching the children how to dig into the soil, how to plant something that would last beyond one harsh season. And though the nights were still heavy, and the ache of loss never left me, I began to believe again that a home could heal. Justice had come. Not the kind that felt triumphant, but the kind that preserved what mattered most. Love, after all, is not pretending your children are perfect. Love is protecting them even from themselves, so the innocent can have a future. Dear friends, thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next journey we share together. From my heart to yours, may you have health, peace, and the warmth of family around your table. Treasure those moments. They are more precious than any fortune. Good night, and God bless your families.